Thanks, John.
Clancy, yes.
Yeah. Hello, my name is Clancy Westaway. I would like to start with an acknowledgement of country. Glen Eira FC wishes to acknowledge and pay respect to the traditional custodians of all lands which we are meeting today. From wherever we are located and join this online meeting, we acknowledge the deep attachment and connection that Aboriginal people have to their country. We also pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. John Moriarty is a very special person in many respects. He is a member of the Yanyuwa people from the Northern Territory and a member of the Stolen Generation, and is a long-term advocate for Indigenous rights. John has had many diverse achievements throughout his life. He is a very accomplished artist and is the founder of Balarinji Design Studio, which famously painted 2 Qantas jets with Aboriginal art designs. In 1960, John was the first Indigenous man to be selected for our national men's football team, the Socceroos. He has also represented South Australia in football 17 times. In 2012, John and Russ Moriarty created the Moriarty Foundation to help Aboriginal children reach their potential in education and well-being through different programs, including the John Moriarty Football Program. John, it is an honour to have you here today. Welcome to Glen Eira FC. Over to you, John.
Thank you very much, Clancy. Yes, I'm from... I'll talk a little bit about my background too, if that's all right. Is that okay with everybody? Yes, I'm from Borroloola, a place on the MacArthur River in the Northern Territory in the Gulf of Carpentaria. My mum, who was a Yanyuwa and Mara lady, she spoke 8 Aboriginal languages. And when I was young, we used to travel around along the river in a dugout canoe. And my mum was a part of that old culture, and I was part of that as well. And it was, at that time, we were very difficult because MacArthur River is full of crocodiles. So we had to be very, very careful not to go swimming in any place that crocodiles can get you. And they were very, very vicious. And my dreaming is kangaroo dreaming. And of course, Clancy mentioned the jumbo jets. The first one was the kangaroo dreaming, Wunala dreaming, which we call it. And of course, that was one of those times when we had to seek permission, and I still do, with our elders, although I'm part of that group now, to make sure that everything is okay with the community on things like joining the different culture. But when I was 4, my mother went to Roper River Mission, which was an Anglican mission in those days. And I was there for a few days at school, and without my mother's knowledge, I was loaded on the back of an army truck and sent down to Alice Springs, put on the train there, through to Adelaide, Melbourne to Sydney, and we were put in a home at Mulgo, which is 40 miles west of Sydney at the base of the Blue Mountains. And I lived there for 8 years. And then after that, we were removed to Adelaide, where a priest started a home in St. Francis House in Semaphore. And the boys went there, and the girls and the older ladies were sent back to Alice Springs. The girls into St. Mary's Hostel, and the boys into St. Francis House in Semaphore, Adelaide. But in these times, it was very difficult, of course. It took me a long time to get in touch with my mother, and it wasn't until I was 15 years of age when, at school holiday time, some of the boys in the home at Adelaide went back to Alice Springs and stayed with their families. People like Charlie Perkins, Malcolm Cooper, and some of the other bigger boys, Peter Telmouth and all that group. But the boys from further north, like me, we had to stay at Adelaide in the home. But on a couple of occasions, we were allowed to go to Alice Springs to have a break at St John's Hostel there to give the ladies and the staff in Adelaide a bit of a holiday. But at that time, it was difficult, but it was also, I thought it was very exciting to move around and meet different people, especially older people that I was able to sit down and listen to. Because when I was 15 again, on one of those holiday breaks in Alice Springs, it was there where I looked across the road, and this lady was looking at me, this Aboriginal lady, this tribal woman, and she walked across the road, and I was standing there still looking at her, and she walked up to me and said, "Where are you from?" I said, "I'm from Borroloola." She said, "What is your name?" I said, "My name is John Moriarty." She said, "I am your mother." And that's how we met for the first time. So since I was taken away when I was 4. So it was good times then, but I had good times in Adelaide too, because I learnt a lot and was able to travel around with the school to play sport and also to meet and mix with a lot of my schoolmates. And of course, that's where I played football, began to play football. And this practice match was right next to the home where we were living. It was a soccer ground, and it was the under-18 state intermediate team. And we were watching them, and of course, we watched them right to the end when they finished. And the coach came across to the boys sitting on the fence. It was a stone fence. I was sitting on that, and they said, "Would you like to give us a warm down?" And we said, "We've got no boots, we've got no shoes." He said, "No, that's all right. We'll just have a warm down." We played them, and St Francis boys beat them about 6 or 8-0 in a practice match. And after that, this gentleman walked around. His name is Mr. Telfer. And he came up to me and said, "Would you like to play for us?" I said, "No, thank you, sir." And he walked around, asked the other boys, and we kept standing there. He came across to me again. He said, "Would you like to play for," before he can say us, and before I can say, "No, thank you, sir," he said, "I'll buy you a pair of boots." And I said, "I will play soccer." That's when I was introduced to the game, and the pair of soccer boots gave me an introduction into soccer. And I played with Port Thistle, then Port Adelaide, then Juventus in Adelaide, which is an Italian club, as you probably all know. And I was able to mix with many, many migrants, and of course, a lot of those were Italians, Greeks, Yugoslavs, Serbians, English, the lot, Germans, and I was able to mix and meet, and they treated me just like an ordinary citizen. And this gave me a great start to football. And I was selected for South Australia, and my first trip was to play in Perth. And my first flight in an aeroplane. It took us 6 1/4 hours in a Douglas C6B 4-engine plane, and I was so enthralled, so happy to play football over there, but to meet, mix and travel. And we got over there to Perth, and we played 2 games over there, my first 2 games in Perth, and I was interviewed for the first time on radio after that, because I must have played a good game, because they said I was one of the best players on the ground. So I was very happy and very, of course, very enthralled about the selection and so on. And then I was interviewed my first time, and I said, I was very shy, but they asked me questions. I could hardly talk, with a lot of people. But at that time of the year, in those of my life and of my background, I was able to meet, mix, and match my skills and services on the football ground, and also meet and mix and share stories. So we played those 2 games there, and then it was one of those times that I really remember as part of my early part that gave me a great start in football and a great start in life. I'll just go on a little bit further. When I was playing for South Australia, I played 17 games, as you mentioned, Clancy, that a journalist from England saw me play in Perth, Adelaide, Hobart, and at the Australian Championships that were in Melbourne. Then he approached a couple of clubs in England, Everton, Tottenham and Arsenal, and he said, I can go over there and trial with them, and if you like, you'll be able to play for them. I said, oh, thank you very much. I'd love to. But I was doing my apprenticeship as a fitter and turner, and I thought, I've got to have some skills. And I thought, I better finish that. And then I went over there after that, but while I was over there, I was asked to come back to play for Juventus in the Australian Championships. And that's when I decided to come back, play football, but also graduate and go do a university course, which I did at Flinders University in Adelaide. So it's all those avenues through football and education that gave me a great start. I can talk on the issues, but I thought I'd just leave it there, and maybe you can ask me a few questions, but if I think of something that's pertinent, I can go on and speak about my background, if that's okay.
Okay, thanks, John. So I'll just start with the first question. So we've seen a lot of discrimination in AFL towards Aboriginal people, e.g. the booing of Adam Goodes from the Swans. Do you think this happens in soccer as well for Indigenous Australians? And if not, why not?
I didn't see a lot of it. Of course, when I was playing in some of the championships matches, I copped a little bit then, but I thought, I'm better than them. Why should I lower myself to argue with them? And this is how I alter things. But before that, this man who's from interstate team, I won't tell you which one, called me some really bad names, like probably what Adam Goodes was being abused, but this was by an adult male, a player. And I copped it then. Then I threw the ball at him, hit him in the face, and I was sent off. So it wasn't a very good time to do it. But that taught me a lot. And I had to be confronted by the team, not the team, the Australian Federation, as well as the Australian Federation. Why did I behave like that? And I told them, and I was given an apology, and that never happened again with me after that. So, but it did strike me on a few occasions, but I just let it slip under, out of the way. And what I did, I played better football when people like that abused me. So I just showed my skills. I thought this is the best way I can approach it, but also apply the skills and become something that I wanted to be without becoming caught up in issues like Adam Goodes was.
Okay, thank you, John. Harley,
Hi, I'm Harley. Do you think it also made you mentally stronger to know that the racial discrimination was going around? Did it make you mentally stronger to be able to be persistent? And
I certainly did, Hayley. It made me so much stronger. And I thought, well, if this is culture and the weakness of some of these people, I can't lower myself to their standards. And I thought, let me show my skills on the field and off it. And that's the way I showed what I was on and off the field. And I think that did a great deal for me.
thank you.
Yes?
Alice,
Olivia, is it?
did they treat you well, kid in the homes? Or when you
Could you
were a kid, did they treat
when we were in the home? Yes, we did get a lot of discrimination like that. And one of the reasons why I became involved in the fight for Aboriginal rights in those early days, we used to, we set up an Aboriginal organisation called the Aborigines Progress Association in Adelaide. And Malcolm Cooper, one of the boys in the home, was the chair of it, and I was a member of it. And we fought for Aboriginal rights in those early days. And at the state level, we fought the discrimination issues, but also took it on a federal level. And we were part of the Federal Council for the Advancement of Aborigines and Torres Strait Islanders that met in Canberra every Easter. And even in those days when I had a little old vehicle, little Volkswagen, and I'd drive over to Canberra for meetings. And on one occasion, the little Volkswagen broke down, and I left on the side of the road, hitchhiked to Canberra with a semi-trailer, and he dropped me off. Then on the road to Canberra, I got another ride, and there we fought for Aboriginal rights every Easter. And this is what brought about the 1967 referendum, and that brought about, in my view, equality to begin with, so that we can vote, and I didn't have to show that I was an Aboriginal, because I refused to have an exemption card. It's a card just like a driver's license. It only had to. It was only done with Aboriginal people to show that they had acquired a standard of living equal to that of a white man and could be treated as a white man. And I thought this was disgraceful. Why can't we be equal to anyone else and have good friends, boyfriends, soccer field, sporting grounds, girlfriends, and things like that? I thought, why not? And that's what I fought for the equal rights for Aboriginal, beginning with the 1967 referendum. And in 1973, the first time Department of Aboriginal Affairs in the federal government was established in Canberra. And I ended up working with the department in Canberra to bring about better rights and but also to give Aborigines opportunities in every state to say, this is the way you should do it if you want to do it, what you want to do, like going to school, doing a university course, doing a trade, how the best type of schooling to get to being a tradesman or a nurse with the girls and so on. So it is all those sort of things that we were able to bring to the forefront and have Aboriginal people work in that way to achieve their goals, be whatever it be, nurse, doctor, or whatever it might be. I hope that answered your question. Yes? Hello?
Thank Olivia?
Olivia, yes? Please?
Thank you. I'm Olivia. And I was wondering, do you think enough Aboriginals feel like they can play sports professionally?
I think sport has given many Aboriginal people the opportunity to move forward, because sport does break down many barriers, and it did a lot for me with my game, football, round ball game, which is your game, and for the other boys, some of them played Australian rules, and two of our boys, two older boys who are relatives of mine from Borroloola, even played top grade rugby league in England, and because we grew up in Sydney playing rugby league, and I was glad I moved to Adelaide because that's when I was introduced to soccer, and that gave me a better start than what I think rugby league gave the boys at our home. But sport, through those two boys, gave me an opportunity to say, well, if they can play overseas, why can't I with my game and with my great game of football, our game? And it was that opportunity that gave me, through those two older relatives of mine, to say, yes, I will use sport as a breaking down barriers to achieve what I want to achieve. Yes, is that Eva?
Thank you.
Eva?
Yes. Yes.
Hello, my name is Eva and I'm 9. Do you still have the shirt from the uniform you wore when you first went to play for Australia?
And when I was, that's a very good question. Often when I played in different teams, I was given a shirt and I gave it to other people because they wanted to play football, and I thought that gave them a start. But with the opportunity that you mentioned, I was not able to, because I moved on a different pathway, and at that time we were not given. We didn't have any shirts to take away at those times. Is there someone else? Hello? Who is it?
John, you're on mute. Sorry, the other John Suganana.
Okay, John.
You're on mute.
Okay, can you hear me? You can hear me now? Cool.
Yes.
Hey, John. I'm John Suganathan. And today I also lived in Seymour for a little while and played for Port Adelaide. So it's nice. Takes me back to my Port Adelaide days. Around your experience as a stolen generation, what's your, I guess, do you have anger towards that? How do you deal with that? What is it like to be separated from your mother as a child and with and share, I guess, give us some experience of what goes through people going through that separation, forced separation.
Well, yeah, obviously I did miss her, but we had close relatives that looked after us as well. I mentioned when we were at Mulgoa, there were some ladies with us because they had children the same age as me, and they treated me as if I was one of theirs because we were very closely related. And coming from Rope River and knowing my mother, because we have a very strong skin system in the old tribal traditional way. And that was one of those things that kept me connected. And we played soccer there, John, and I still go back to Port Adelaide and to Juventus and meet up with my old soccer mates in those days. And that's a long time ago, because I'm 82 now, and it's a long, long time ago, but I still keep in touch with some of those fellas I grew up with and played football with. And I go back to Adelaide and watch the games occasionally, go to Hindmarsh Stadium, because Hindmarsh was the ground where we played interstate football, and that was very good for me, and I still go back there and think it's part of my home ground as well as Port Adelaide. And John, while you're there, I was just thinking of Port Adelaide. They've just moved down to a new ground at Outer Harbour down towards Osborne Power Station, Taparoo.
Okay, yes.
They've got a new ground there, and
Right.
I go there to watch the teams warm up. And some of the family that took me in when I was kicked out of the home when I was 15, their grandchildren lived there, but also the lady that was the same age as me. I go and stay with them in Largs North, and we go down to see the soccer games, and their grandchildren play for Port Adelaide.
The Port Adelaide soccer or AFL?
Soccer, of course.
So soccer, of course. Yeah. Okay. You bring fond memories because I played in fact basketball for Taparoo, and I played cricket for Port Adelaide, not football. And at Albert Noble, I used to train. So it's a small world, and in fact, my mother. And I went to Woodville High School for a little while, and my mother passed away there. So you bring some fond memories to me of my own time in Port Adelaide, although it was brief, but yes, it's a small world. So thank you for answering that question. And
So, John, what is your background?
So I'm Sri Lankan. So we came
Sri Lankan?
in the 80s, leaving the Civil War, and yeah, we lived in Mangambia and then Adelaide for a while, and then. And ended up a while ago in Melbourne, about 10 years ago in Melbourne. So thanks.
On my trip to England, which of course football took me there, I stopped in Sri Lanka on the ship, just at the wharf, just to stop there and head back on and head off to England.
Okay, yes, yeah. And so that was in the 70s or 60s. How long ago was that?
In the 60s.
60s, okay, okay, nice. In Colombo, was it Colombo?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, Colombo, yeah, lovely. Okay, good. All right. Two other questions.
Olivia, did you?
Thank you. I was just going to ask you, when you were separated from your mother, were you ever nervous that you weren't ever going to see her again?
I certainly was, and I was. As I started growing older, I started missing her more because I started growing up and being my own personality, and I thought I should spend some time and have a great deal of knowledge about my family, and that's when I started writing and trying to find her, sending letters up to the Northern Territory, and out of the blue, I got a letter from a lady who was a welfare officer looking after the Aboriginal people in Borroloola, and told me about my mother and so on. And I still had that letter at home right next to my bed, and that gave me a great start. And that's when I was able to have this lady help me meet my mother in Alice Springs, like I mentioned earlier. And that was the time that I was feeling very lonely, very lost, and I was walking along the street with my cousin from Roper River, as I mentioned, and they sat down with me and listened to my mother and hear the stories, and gave me a great background to what my life was like, or should have been like, in Borroloola. But I was still very happy to be able to move forward and get an education, because I ended up going to doing an apprenticeship, playing football, did my degree at Flinders University, and gave me good jobs in the and also to help my wife and I set up our business, and we employ about 15 people, and also we coach with our John Moriarty football. And Olivia, I think this might interest you too. We coach 1,400 Aboriginal children a week around Dubbo, New South Wales, in Coranda in Queensland, and Tennant Creek, Northern Territory, as well as Borroloola and Robinson River in the Northern Territory. And I would like to expand our programs to coach in other places throughout the country, because it gives Aboriginal kids a good start. Football gave me a good start and gave me great education as well. And we have 5 girls that are on scholarships in Sydney, and they came through our football program, and they're at very good schools in Sydney, and football gave them this good start. So yes, Livia, football has been very good for me, and it's good for some of our kids, and it's given them a good start too with education and their life at this, even at the early stage in which they are. Yes, Eva?
In the every Aboriginal, every Aboriginal has a tribe.
Yes.
Right? What do you also have a totem?
Yes.
What is it?
I'll go. My totem is a kangaroo, and I belong to that land area, but we come right through to that, including coming right up to the rainbow dreaming, which I mentioned very briefly. But when I was going to school, we didn't have any of that knowledge. I had to go back to my community, and some of those older people, I had to sit with them and talk with them, and that from 15 years of age, I was able to take it on board. But yes, my dreaming is kangaroo dreaming, and we come right through to the rainbow snake. And our eldest son, we have skin names. 8 skin names for men, 8 for women. Mine's Jugudai, and I can only marry Nungalama, and my sons, and I got to think now, yes, Balarinji, and my daughters, Nuyarimas. So but that allows you to mix and meet with other Aboriginal tribes. And when I go back to the bush, I can sit down with some people, and they say, I ask them what their skin names are, what their tribal names are. And, well, what's your skin name? And I say, I'm Jugudai. And they say, oh, there's your cousin over there, there's your brother, there's your uncle there, there's your son there, there's your father, there's your wife, and there's your sister. So that's the way it works in those old systems. And it's very, very complicated, very complex, but it kept our bloodlines pure for centuries. You mentioned tribes, yes. Yanyuwa tribe, that was, my mum spoke 8 tribal languages. In the early days, there were over 360 different Aboriginal languages, and over 600 different dialects. So when you had to go somewhere, you could learn to communicate with the old tribal way, who your relatives are, who can look after you while you're there, and who you can't go near, because you're not allowed to talk to your mother-in-law. And that's a funny law in the white Australian system, but that is part of our system with our old bushways, the tribal system I grew up in the early days.
You said that your totem was kangaroo. What does kangaroo mean?
It's the animal kangaroo dreaming, and when you see them, you can eat them when you kill them, but when you kill them, you have to sing their song, and that takes the badness and the other issues belonging to that animal. Like I mentioned, my son, one's a dugong, excuse me, my daughter's a mermaid, and the other son is a king brown snake, the cheeky brown snake. So we go in all those areas, and I can't eat certain things unless it's killed in a particular way and their songs are sung. It's very, very complex. I hope I've answered some part of your question.
Georgia,
Georgia?
did you have a question?
Yes, Georgia?
John, I was just wondering if your kids played football, and if they did you coach them?
Georgia, yes. My eldest son didn't play any sport at all, but James and Julia played football, our game, and they played for a while. James damaged his knee, and Julia ended up playing tennis. So yes, I did coach them.
Were you a patient coach, being a Socceroos player? Were you a patient coach, or did you have high standards for your children?
Sometimes I got a little bit anxious because the concentration should have been better. You know, I didn't tell you this before, but my coach was called Mick O'Malley, and he was Irish with Scottish descent. But he came over to Adelaide and played in the same team as me, and he became my coach and mentor. And that man, he played for Australia, and he told me, you did not touch that ball as quickly and neatly as you did. You had to touch it twice to get it under control. And I said, yes, that's right. So do it again. And that's how strict he was. But I enjoyed every bit because he took time out after work. We worked together, and I was able to talk to him in lunchtimes and things like that, and ask about the game, how you do this and that. And he'd coach me for an hour after work. And he did this out of his own time. So he was a mentor, and I admired him very much. He died in his late 80s, years ago. And I felt that I was very privileged to have someone like that coach me and become my mentor and my friend and very close relative.
It's incredible what a coach does for you. I think John coaches many of our girls, and I'm sure they'd be saying the same thing in their old age. John
Yes.
Moriarty to John Stiganathanan. Yes.
Thank you,
John, can I ask
John?
one more question? I'm just interested in how many girls you've got in your foundation program, your football program. I'm just interested to know if Indigenous girls are as interested in soccer as I know they are in AFL.
We have the girls on a 50-50 basis with the boys.
Oh, good,
So
great.
That's the way we have it. And we find that in some little places we have 52% girls because some of the boys, fall back with not keeping on time to the coaching and things like that. So we are very strongly committed to 50-50 basis with our program and even in our office. Yes.
You're ahead of the FFA. I think their goal date for that is 2027. So you're well ahead, John. You're 7 years ahead.
I think FFA have to put on some running boots, don't you think?
Yep, I do.
Speed
I
going,
do.
Georgie, yes.
Thank you very much for answering those questions. And thank you for coming. It's been fantastic.
Oh,
Loved it.
pleasure. Pleasure.
Thank you.
Sophie,
Yes, Sophie?
Who is your favourite coach? And how many did you have?
Yeah, my favourite coach was started off with a fellow called, forgotten his surname, but his name was John too, and he was the one that took me to Perth. I'll think of his name later, hopefully. But he took me and the South Australian team to Perth, and I was really taken by his commitment, his skills, coaching skills, and how we had to develop our game as a team and as individuals. And he elevated us as individuals with our particular skills. Some people had to learn to kick with their left foot, and some left footers had to learn to kick with their right foot. So it was those sort of things. And I still get the girls to play with both feet, boys to play with both feet. And it's so important to treat them as equals. And also the coaching methods, we take it on board together. I hope that answered your question.
Simone.
Oh, hello, Simone.
Hi. Thanks, John. Thanks for coming to speak to all of us. It's been absolutely wonderful and very inspiring. John, you haven't talked about your art. Was that something that was always with you? How was that sparked, your interest in art, and how was that nurtured?
Well, being a kangaroo dreaming person, we had to learn to draw a kangaroo. But it's all done with marks and dots and things like that. So that's a very special way with our ceremonial things. But when we draw on bark or on the ground and sand and things like that, you drew the animals. And kangaroo was the one that I started off with. But also we did things for, for our art to sell. We did scarves, T-shirts and all those things in those early days. And I even had some jewellery that we had done with our designs on it. So I had to do all those things. And then once we got moving, our art collection became huge. And we've got racks and racks of art that we've done over all these years. So when we want to do something, we pull those out and say, this is the kangaroo things. If someone's not already aware of it, this is the way we want the staff to develop the issues, because it could be done another way. But we also deal with a lot of with our work, because we have Aboriginal people that have, for instance, along the highways, the New South Wales Highway Department would like to have Aboriginal art along the highway where people can see Aboriginal art, tell them stories, but it can't be in certain areas because it might distract. But in certain places they can have it. So what we've done with some of the people along that highway is to get the Aboriginal people from those areas to show their dreamings and their art, what they do, and that can be shown in that way to put on the art in those areas along the roadways and so on that we can have in Queensland or New South Wales or even wherever we got this type of work. So we do it that way as well. So have the local people do their own art from their own tribal groups. And like I mentioned, there are over 360 different languages, but over 600 different tribal groups, because those tribal groups have their own way. So we hold it very strongly up in the territory, the way I was brought up, to say that belongs to that mob, they'll tell you when they can come in. There's your brother. Your brother will bring you in to their culture, and you can bring them into your culture as well. Very complex at times, but the girls can do it with the women, and our girls show it when they mix with the footballers and the teams that they play with. And a lot of our Aboriginal kids, a lot of people, I think, a lot of people say it too, that Aboriginal kids are very dexterous on the field, and I think Aboriginal girls and boys are tailor-made physically, mentally, and skills-wise to play our game, football, the round ball game. I hope that answered some of your questions there.
It did, thank you. And I have one more quick question. Given all your many accomplishments, what are you most proud of, John?
I'm proud of having fought for Aboriginal rights to bring people, even one of the boys from the home. I got him, two of us from the Aboriginal Progress Association, got him, encouraged him to do the Aboriginal flag. And that was part of that. Then working in the Federal Department of Aboriginal Affairs, and then going back to South Australia to head the Aboriginal Affairs Department there. I headed the Aboriginal Affairs Department in New South Wales and Victoria and Tasmania. And that way brought the knowledge that I had and the way I thought was a good way to bring Aboriginal culture to the forefront. And sport was one, but art was another one, easily done. But education is the other that brought our people coming up in certain levels like that to show that, yes, they can achieve these things. But those areas that I started off with were very tough in those days, but I thought gave me a good start.
Thank you.
Can I just show you our football jacket, the John Moriarty football? Can you see that? John Moriarty football. The light's not very bright, I'm afraid, but...
No, we can see it well. We can see
our jacket. And it's John Moriarty Football Foundation, John Moriarty Football. Is there anything else that I can answer with another question, if you wish?
I've got a question.
Yes.
So when you played football or soccer, what was the most memorable game you had? Like a game you can remember like it was yesterday?
Scoring a number of goals. Yes. And playing with skills that you can walk around players, but with your speed and the skills, it did a lot for me. And I was in that goal I scored in Perth was a very good one. And also, I find that it's important to make a goal as well. And I'd beat people, then beat another one, and then put someone right in front of goals in a easy place, so because they moved into position in a very quick and depth way, so that they can get the ball on their own. And I did this many times, and I was honoured by having teammates that can play like that, and they can give me balls as well, so I can move full pace, not getting offside at the right time to get the ball, to get the pass, to get the goals and pass it on to others. So teamwork is so important. And I thought those sort of things I felt very proud of. But scoring a couple of those goals was very important for me too. But I felt it on behalf of the team as well, not just for me.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
So we'll just wrap up after the last question. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask?
I can, Clancy. I would like to, if nobody else is, but if some other one, I've already had a couple of turns. Is anybody else? So I might ask. So John, and thanks, Clancy, for letting me have the last question. So if you were to give any advice, so there's football family here, and mostly girls who play, some of our girls who play, parents and coaches. What would the advice you would give to maybe all three, the young players here, the girls, maybe parents of players and coaches?
Look, I think it's important to have a good coach, but they must be able to get on with the team as well as the individuals in that team. And I think I may have misread a couple of your points there because I was finding it hard to listen because it's very echoey. But I found that those kids and the team players that show their skills and build it as part of the team, with their individual skills, I think is important. And being coached, having a good coach, playing those one-touch games, touch, ball, pass, back again, catch on chest, pass it, on your knees, all those sorts of things. So get control of the ball as quickly as possible in an instant. And like my coach, Mick O'Malley, used to say, you had to touch that ball twice before you. That first touch should have put in position to get the ball into the right position so that you can kick it or score a goal or pass it to your mate.
Great. Thanks for the advice, John, and sharing it with us.
Look, I'm very honoured to meet all you girls and you gentlemen. John, keep up the good game. It's a great game. Just put up your hands if you really like the game. Girls? Yes? Yes, that's how I was too. I think it's so important to have that in the back of your mind because our game, our football game is made for both men and women. And you can develop your skills. And I think it'll bring you great skills. And, on one coaching class there one day, we had Lydia Williams, who plays for the Matildas. And we all know, what's her name, the Kerr girl? Yes.
Sam Kerr.
Yeah, I'm just testing the girl. Yeah, Sam, I got a couple of the girls to meet them, and they were so honoured to meet the girls, and vice versa. So it's those sort of things that it's good to meet and mix, and for you to carry on with the game. And if I ever get a chance, I'd love to come visit you at Glen Eira Football Club and see you all in action. Hopefully, when the virus issue is out and out, away, it'd be good to come down there.
John, I would love to take that offer. So if you're ever in Melbourne and you've got a little bit of spare time, you can come and visit us, or we can come and see you. That would be you continue to inspire all of us, and that would be that would be awesome. So thank you for making that available to us when you're here and you're free in Melbourne. That'll be great.
Look, it's been a pleasure. For me, and thank you for that, because I think the game's great, and with you young ladies off on new pathways to move forward, do it to your heart's content and achieve as much as you can. All the very best. Thank you, John and team.
So we're going to wrap up now. So thanks, John, for taking the time out of your day to speak to us about your soccer journey and your past and the many achievements you have achieved throughout your life. On behalf of Glen Eira FC, thank you, John. It's been an honour.
Thank you very much. I think it's an honour to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Wonderful.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.